So I'm going to teach you about astrocartography today. It's going to be kind of a long lesson, so sit down, get comfortable. Maybe you want to get yourself some coffee or some tea, but I'm going to teach you basically everything you need to know to be able to run your own astrocartography map and to be able to relocate to a location that should generally be positive for you and bring about what you want to bring about. So let's start with just some basic um, astrocartography concepts. So let's see here. Okay, so this is astrocartography. So what astrocartography does is it takes your birth chart and it expands it over a big map. A couple things you're going to need to be able to understand astrocartography is you need your natal chart, you need an astrocartography map, and you need a relocation chart. The only thing with relocation charts is you're probably not going to be able to access this unless you have astrology software. So the two softwares available are SolarFire and Astro Gold. Um, but you can get by pretty well with just using your natal chart and an astrocartography map. You also probably need a basic understanding of astrology. So you can you're going to need to understand like planetary influences and different houses just so you can understand how it fits into your chart overall. So the first thing you need is your natal chart. You can go ahead and find this on astro.com, or you can run your software if you have software. This is a picture of my natal chart. Why your natal chart is important is because it's going to help you decide which energies you want to move towards. So let's say, for example, you're wanting to spark some stuff within your career. You might want to travel to areas similar to your 10th house or that evoke like 10th house energy. So for me, my 10th house is in Aquarius. So lines that would be beneficial to activate those planetary influences would be my Mercury line, which sits in my 10th house, my Mars line, which sits in my 10th house, and also my Saturn line, because Saturn is the ruler of my 10th house. If I also want to do some career stuff, I could equally travel to my Uranus line or my Neptune line because they are all conjuncting my MC, which is also a career point. Yeah, so there's a lot of different options here, but it depends on which energies you want to evoke. So I talked a little bit about my MC point up here. That was up in my 9th house. So we have MC, IC, AS, and DS, and these are all important to know because when you pull up your astrocartography map, you're going to see representations of each of these. So for example, you might see your sun MC. So your MC line is public facing. It's the image that the public sees you in. This is your career and your life purpose. So let's say that you would want to evoke different career energies. I might want to travel to my Mercury MC. The next one is our IC, and our IC sits directly opposite of our MC. So my MC is up here in my 9th house. My IC is down here in Cancer in my 3rd house. Your IC point is home, family, generational ties, and intimate processing of your life. It's typical at the IC line that you're going to be focused more on home and family life than you would be focused on your career. So if you're wanting to evoke career things, you wouldn't probably want to travel to your IC point. IC point would be perfect for like raising a family or getting in touch with maybe your roots. So yeah, there's different times in life we want different things. Next one is your ascendant. If you want people to what I want to say is your ascendant is more about yourself. So at your ascendant point, which sits over here in your 1st house, this is where you're going to be focusing on the self most. So you have self-perception, self-love, and how others interpret you. This is like the outer shell that others might see of you. Maybe they don't have a full picture of who you are, but just generally upon first glance, this is like what they might see you as. Your DS line is exactly opposite your ascendant line, and that's all about the other. So instead of focusing on ourself over here at the AS point, we would focus on others in the DS point. DS lines are good for other people, relationships, and partnerships. So maybe you want to visit your DS line to cultivate new relationships in your life. Maybe you're looking for a romantic partner, or maybe you're tired of focusing on yourself and want to make more friends. You might visit your DS line. Your DS line will also, so instead of bringing up maybe, okay, let's say, for example, you visit your Jupiter DS line. Instead of seeing those Jupiter qualities within yourself, you might see those Jupiter qualities within other people. So this might be like an example of you move to a really wealthy city. And maybe you yourself aren't very wealthy, but everybody around you seems to be really wealthy. This would be like a Jupiter DS line experience. Okay, so we have different lines, and maybe you're going to want to keep a list of this so that when you look at your own astrocartography map, you're able to bring these to light. So your sun line, this is where you shine brightly. Think of the sun shines. This is a good line for fame, for recognition. It's where you will be noticed. Whether you're going to be noticed in a good or bad way depends upon the energies that influence this locality, and it also depends where the sun sits in your birth chart. So with any of these lines, and any of these planetary energies, you're going to want to look where they sit in your birth chart to understand how they will come to fruition. So for example, let's just take the sun line. Let's go back and look at my birth chart. My sun sits up here in my 11th house. So it's typical that when I visit my sun line, I might bring about more of these 11th house energies, which is like community or broader community. Maybe I have a large friend base here, or I don't know, just anything to deal with the 11th house. Okay, next we have moon lines. It's typical with the moon. Anytime the moon is involved, we have deep emotional processing. These are things that we can't necessarily see, but lie beneath the surface, such as emotions. This is intimate processing and feelings. So visiting your moon line might bring up some feelings. This is a good place to really get in touch with who you are on a deeper level. And let's say, for example, that the moon sits at your MC point. The moon is like your public facing image. So people might see you as somebody very emotional or somebody very in touch with their emotions. Maybe they might see you as very motherly, very maternal. These are things that are associated with the moon. Next one, we have our Mercury line. This is speaking, publishing, talking to people, mental strength, and connection. Visiting this line would be good for making connections, broadening your connections. If you want to be an author, a speaker, a podcast host, a writer, a journalist, anything that involves these like mercurial topics, Mercury lines would be really good for you. I currently am on a Mercury Moon cross line, so I'm experiencing both Mercury and Moon energies. Your next one would be your Venus line. This is, so Venus has been associated with like wealth and beauty. It's also associated with love, relationships, values, and even self-love. Depending on where Venus sits in your chart, and also depending whether it's IC, MC, AS, or DS, will give you more information on how this Venus line will impact you. Overall, it's a good place to feel kind of like rose-colored glasses, but sometimes your Venus line can be just that. It can be rose-colored glasses. So it might not necessarily be great for like settling down or living, but it could be great for like shopping, eating good food, enjoying intimate relationships with people, things like this. Your Mars line, your Mars is your passions, direction and drive, aggression and conflict. It's typical in your Mars line that you might be more confrontational than you would typically be. Like I said, it depends on MC, IC, AS, and DS, but nonetheless, it's your Mars line. So it's going to give you drive, it's going to give you energy to work towards your goals. It depends on how much you want to confront that energy. One thing that I also want to notice here is that sometimes we are out of touch with different energies that we have in our birth chart. Let's go back and look at my birth chart here. So I don't really have an example here, but things that lie outside of your typical planetary energies, let's say my Chiron down here, let's pretend that that's like my Saturn placement. If my Saturn placement was down here, this would be considered a shadowed planet, and it would be something that probably I don't necessarily see or have that much awareness of because I don't have a lot of energy down there with that. It's kind of like isolated from my chart. So therefore, sometimes it manifests as like isolated from my conscious processing and conscious awareness. So visiting my Saturn line, which I actually forgot to put in here, but visiting my Saturn line might bring up all of that awareness that I didn't necessarily have before. So Saturn lines, because I didn't put it in here, I'll just explain it. Saturn lines are good for like working ventures, but Saturn can be very isolating. So I've heard people who have experienced go to Saturn lines have difficulty making friends or just feeling rather a lonely experience. And maybe it kind of feels like you're working a lot or spending a lot of time on your craft, but it might be also taking a longer time to achieve that goal. There are people that go to school on their Saturn lines, and it's very representational of that long time that it takes you to achieve that. So it takes you 4 years maybe to get your bachelor's degree. You're spending all those 4 years working towards that goal, but it's taking time. Okay, so your next one would be your Jupiter line. This is expansion, luck, abundance, dependent on surrounding energies. So just because you visit your Jupiter line doesn't mean that you're going to be automatically lucky or automatically going to be wealthy. That's not necessarily true because Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So for example, I lived on a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction line before, and Jupiter was expanding Uranus energy, which is very unpredictable. And I had a very intense, unpredictable experience. So, yes, your Jupiter line, you're going to want to pay attention to what energies surround it and where it sits in your birth chart. That moves me to my next one, which is Uranus, which is chaos, unpredictability, technology on the outside of society, unique social networks. So it might be visiting Uranus line, you might get in touch with like some type of community that's kind of underground or a little bit different from like the typical community. It might be here that you get involved in technology or you're on the outskirts of like learning some new information. It's good for like scientific discoveries. Um, what else? Yeah, it's just overall unpredictable. So like with Uranus energy, I would say your day-to-day life will not be the same. Like you're going to experience a lot of shifts in what you do day to day. Neptune. Your Neptune line, Neptune is known for being confusing. It's known for being spiritual, being very deep. People on their Neptune line sometimes struggle with drugs and loss of material possessions. Neptune line kind of asks you to get more in touch with the spiritual side of life. And if you're unable to form that connection, sometimes people will go in search of drugs to kind of have that connection to source. So, yeah, that's Neptune lines. Neptune lines can also feel like dreamy. They can also feel like, wow, this is like the perfect life, the life that I always wanted to live, but it can be a little bit ungrounding. That's what I would say. Pluto lines are our last one. These ones are deeply transformational. They're very subconscious. They really help us dive deeper into our subconscious network. And they are also associated with death. There have been a couple of famous people that have been known to die on their Pluto lines, but I wouldn't say like traveling to your Pluto line, you're automatically gonna die, because I also lived on my Pluto line, and how it manifested was working with other people and helping them on their own transformational journey. So yeah, it depends. It also depends where Pluto sits in your chart. Another indicator of death, not to be morbid or anything, but would be looking at the ruler of your eighth house. That will give you a good indication of maybe what also brings up some subconscious stuff or some like rebirth energies. So Jupiter for me actually is the ruler of my eighth house. So on my Jupiter line, while others are experience expansion, luck, and abundance, maybe in their on their Jupiter line, for me, since it activates my eighth house, for me it's more transformational, more of an expansion of transformational energy. So that's why I said we always want to take the planet and kind of contrast it back to our birth chart to understand a little bit more about what these energies are going to bring to life. Okay. We also have parents, and this is something that I'm all going to show you. But parents run latitudinally. So these are like influences that we have that also influence the overall energetic nature of a locality. And they are going to be just as important as our astrocartography lines. We really want to pay attention to these because they can totally shift the energetics of a locality. Okay, so that's all for this. Next one I'm going to show you is we're going to jump on astro.com. So what you want to do is go on astro.com, and this one is a free platform that you can use to dive into your astrocartography map. So you're going to want to make a profile if you don't have one. And once you do that, you're going to want to click on this hamburger over here and go down to free horoscopes. It's going to pull up all these different options, but you're going to want to go down to location, astrology, and then click on astro click travel. Okay, so here's your astrocartography map, like I had mentioned before. So as we see, we have all these different energies. I'm just going to use my chart for an example. So looking at my chart, I had, let me think. I had Mercury sitting in my 10th house. So let's say I want to bring Mercury energies to life. I want to dive a little bit deeper into writing and journaling. Maybe I want to go visit my Mercury line. Let's say I want it to relate to my career, so I would travel to my MC line. And I see right here at the top, it says Mercury MC. So I'm going to scroll in and then move up here. Let's see. So my Mercury MC line sits in Greenland. Can click on this line and it says Mercury MC line. So it gives you a little bit of a depiction of what this line might bring to life for you. It says, especially helpful when you're involved in tricky negotiations or have to approach the public. Like it said, public facing. Let's see. Teachers, researchers, politicians, or anyone who has something to say will find an attentive, accepting audience. These places are excellent for planning and organizing long-term projects. You're enthusiastic, your mind is quick, and nothing escapes your sharp perception. So yeah, you can look that. Now, how do we look at our parents? What energies are influencing me? I'm going to click show details here. And at that particular locality, I had Mercury MC line, like we know. Now I have my Mars MC line, which is also close. But those are for longitudinal points. Now, right here, I have crossing Mars and Pluto. Okay, so that's going to sit latitudinally for me. It says it's at the same latitude. So let's see, what does Mars Pluto bring? The planetary combination can be full of tension. So Mars and Pluto are two very volatile energies. So while Mercury may be good for expansion, let's see what Mars and Pluto bring. The main theme here are power and self-assertion. you need to question the way that you have asserted yourself so far. It says that you can behave aggressively. So that's something I want to take note of. Sun Mars is also important. Now, since I have Mars sitting in my 10th house, this energy might actually be beneficial for me because not only does it bring up mercurial stuff, but it also brings up Mars stuff. So this would be a good place for me to go for career related reasons. Now, let's say I might want to visit for relationships. I'm going to want to find my DS lines. And here I believe that they're marked DC, descendant lines. So let's look at my Venus. Okay, I have a Venus DC line going here through India. I believe I have it going through Mumbai. Yes. So I'm going to click on that. So this would be really good for sparking intimate relationships, or maybe just I want to view the world as a very beautiful place, or I think that the people here are very beautiful. Venus DC line would be good for that. I also have checking the parents. I have Mars and Moon's nodes, Mercury, Pluto, and Moon and Saturn. So I might want to read about those to see what different energies influence me there. Now, something that you can't do on astrocartography on the free version is to look at your relocation chart. And I find this to be really helpful, actually, but unfortunately, we can't look at it. So I'm just going to take you over here. So this is Astro Gold. This is a paid software, but I'm going to show you what a relocation chart might look like. Okay, so let's go with that Mumbai theme. I'm going to click on Mumbai, and then I'm going to pull up this chart. I think I have to share it again. Let's just... Okay, hopefully you guys can see. Okay, so this is my relocation chart for Mumbai. So what I would look at here is not only is this a good place because my Venus is activated here, but look at all this seventh house energy that I have. I have Venus here, I have the sun here, and I have Saturn here. So Saturn, oh, and Saturn is also opposite, directly opposite my Chiron, which it happens in my natal birth chart, but this just like relocates my birth chart to the normal or the locality that I chose. So while it might be positive for love, I might have some pain in love here because it's opposite my Chiron. Saturn's opposite my Chiron. I might experience some isolation with Saturn being an element here. But it also depends on transits. So right now I do know that Saturn is conjuncting my sun. So that might be also something that's important to take into consideration. If Saturn's conjuncting my sun in the 7th house, that is also an added Saturn influence that could make me feel a little bit more like maybe I need to focus on myself instead of focusing on other people. Have you heard if you've heard the term right place, right timing, that holds very true for astrocartography, because although the energies could be really positive in that area, if we have specific transits that are making that area more difficult, this could kind of hinder the experience that we want to have. So another thing that might be a focus here is my daily work with Mars and Mercury in my 6th house. There would be something interesting going on with maybe my dating life, as we have Uranus conjunct Neptune down here in the 5th house. This can also be relative to children. So there might be some kind of shift in children or how I date or something like this. I have my moon in my 4th house, so there would be a lot of emotional experience as it comes to home and family life. And my 3rd house, this is my relocated 7th house energies, has Jupiter down here. Now, Jupiter is my chart benefic, so it would likely be that I have some sort of community that I feel um, maybe good about. Yeah. My pain point moves from my fifth house to my first house, so there might be some difficulties that I have with self-image or how I'm viewed by others. Yeah, so that's just an example of a relocated chart. If you do have an opportunity to get your hands on one, I think it really can deepen your experience of your astrocartography map. So yeah, that's everything I have about astrocartography at the moment. If you have more questions about astrocartography, want to learn more, or want your own chart read, feel free to contact me. Me and Maddie work together at Two Girls Talk Transits, but I also have a personal page, Heal.on Earth, which you can find on Instagram, and book an astrocartography meeting with me. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed learning.